quickly hold on. Hey,
Yeah, do that.
just so you know, I've got Thomas, who is from Maker's Mark. So if you're a Maker's Mark drinker, you probably want to ask some specific questions in dealing with maybe Maker's Mark towards the tail end of the interview. But Lindsay is trying to get on. Don't worry, she'll be here. She's having technical difficulties. This is the first time I'm not having technical difficulties. So that's a pretty cool thing to happen. But I know it's only 12 minutes after. But again, we're going to go live. We'll have Lindsay here. Don't worry. We're also going to put this back up over on the YouTube channel for the Bacon Cartel after this is done. So again, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, right? Because there's nothing for you to do anyways. You're being furloughed, and that's it. So everyone, that over there, that's Thomas right there on the screen, as you can see. So
Hey, guys.
Thomas looks like he works for Maker's Mark. He's got the beard, full glasses, the hat. Don't worry. We'll have some fun, right, Thomas?
We will.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, look who just joined.
I figured it out.
Welcome.
Hi.
Yay.
Sorry about that.
As my dogs are now getting involved in it and having a nice little conversation.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thanks for
your patience with my...
Well, no, it's okay. It's all good.
Thanks.
What needs to happen. Glad you
We're all adjusting to learning to work from home.
Right? This is how life is about to be for us for a while, at least.
Yep.
So, Lindsay, let me go over real quick, and if you would go ahead and pronounce your last name, because I have a bad last name, you have a bad last name.
No problem. It's Lindsay Offsasic.
Yeah, there we go. That's worse than Schlissel. And Thomas, you're with Maker's Mark, as we talked about, right?
Yep, sure am.
All right. So, Lindsay, I'm just going to read real quick the bio that you guys have up on the website, leeinitiative.org. So, Lindsay and Chef Edward Lee are co-founders of the Lee Initiative. She's the former manager of the 610 Magnolia and continues, I love this, she continues to be the director of their award-winning wine program. So afterwards, I got some wine questions for you. Throughout her 20-year career in the restaurant industry, Lindsay has devoted tireless hours to all aspects of food life cycle, from farming to distribution to front and back of the house. And now her passion is leading the Lee Initiative and managing director. She is a proud mentor to the chefs and future young restaurant professionals as they develop and progression into leaders of the culinary industry. Now, you and I met, it was last year in Orlando, and you brought with you Nikia Rhodes.
Yes.
Nikia Rhodes. What a phenomenal story she was. I mean...
She's an incredible human.
She is. And if you guys want to know what we're talking about, I'm going to go ahead and type in the comment right now, and you guys can go over after we're done, the leeinitiative.org, and you can see all the people that have kind of passed through the Lee Initiative program. So tell us first about the Lee Initiative program, and then we're going to go to what you're doing now for COVID.
Yeah. So the Lee Initiative program was founded in a response to the Me Too movement. We realized that the picture that was being painted of our industry was not one that we were proud of, but that we had all had great mentors, and for every bad chef, there's an army of good ones behind them. So we looked at a million different ideas of what we could do for young women in our industry, and where we landed was mentorship. We also have a youth hospitality program for young adults 18 to 21 coming out of these culinary CTE programs. Nikia was actually one of the first graduates of that program. And as of 3 weeks ago, we've started running relief kitchens across the country. It was a very quick pivot.
A very quick pivot.
We're lucky that we've had Maker's Mark as a partner all along in all of our endeavors, and they were able to make this happen.
Now, that brings you, Thomas.
Yes.
What drove Makers to look at this and say, we got to be a part of this?
So from the very beginning, when this came across my desk, it fit with Makers. So this was about giving women mentorship and training them in leadership roles. And I think it's something a lot of people don't know about Maker's Mark. but we've actually had women in leadership since the very beginning in 1953 with Margie Samuels, who was Bill's partner and wife. So we've had women making decisions that impact the brand globally since the very beginning. So when we had the opportunity to help do that in the culinary world, which they are our partners and have been, Maker's Mark wouldn't be where it was today without bartenders, servers, and chefs. That was something that we had to partner up with and hit the ground running, and that was 3 years ago.
So you've been, Maker's Mark, the company, has been involved with the first part of the program, and now, because of COVID, flipped the switch and helping them out.
Yep.
That's
yep.
awesome.
Happened very fast. We announced the mentees on March, was it 2nd, Lindsay? The mentees for this year. And then we launched the first relief kitchen, I believe, on the 16th of March. So 2 weeks from announcing the mentees to...
It's been 97 years, but yes.
So mentees, what does that stand for? What is that for? What does that mean?
Lindsay, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So the mentees, through the Lee Initiative program, we select 5 young women per year to be paired with a woman chef and restaurateur that has risen the ranks and gone from being a line cook to now owning several restaurants. Our mentors are James Beard Award winners. They have multiple cookbooks. They're authors. And they spend at least 8 days with their mentor chef, working in their kitchen, having them side by side. And then they essentially, most of them talk to their mentor once a month forever. So those are the 5 chefs that we had selected. We announced on March 2nd. And obviously a lot of those plans have been put on hold.
Right, especially with the COVID-19 going on. Now, Lindsay, a couple of questions for you. I mean, you mentioned it was the Me Too movement that actually kind of spearheaded you guys, you and Chef, to get out there and do this program. And you know, there were, like you mentioned, there were 2 chefs we all know that kind of did this. You've been in the industry for 20 years. What roles have you played? Because you're not a chef. You did correct me. What, besides manager and wine steward, what are some other roles you've had?
I mean, I've had a lot of roles in restaurants. I have been a line cook. I have been a dishwasher. I have been a server. I have been a bartender. I've worked in direct wholesale distribution and farming. I've pretty much had every role in a restaurant that you could have. So I never really saw myself landing in the restaurant industry as a career for the rest of my life. When I decided to have kids, I happened to be working for a great woman chef and restaurateur who, you know, helped me see that there is a way to do that. You can be a parent. You can be a GM of a restaurant. You can make it work. It has to do with working for the right people and having the right support network.
You know, thank you so much for pointing that out, because the last 3 days, besides yesterday, I put the one interview on hold yesterday because there was 2 farms locally that had some £1 million worth of product that was going bad. So I put that on hold, but I wanted to do the interview yesterday with them. But you just mentioned one of the things that we were talking about with the 3 chefs that are female. How do you balance that lifestyle of being the chef, being a manager in the restaurant industry? And I think you just nailed it. It's having that right owner/partner to work for and work with. And not just female, but male as well.
Yeah. You know, when I started working for Chef Lee, I had a 10-month-old son and a 3-month-old son, or a 3-year-old son that were both still nursing. And all the things that come with having tiny children. And he never batted an eye to accommodate what I needed to be an effective leader and work with him.
And then what were some of the objects or the opportunities you went through growing up in the industry, and how did you overachieve those opportunities? Like what barriers did you have in front of you?
I mean, I don't think that I had any specific barriers that anybody else faces coming up in the industry. Like I said, my biggest moment was when I decided, you know, I found out I was having my first child. I essentially went to put in my resignation because I didn't think there was any way I could make that work. You know, our industry is not notorious for having maternity coverage or paid time off or accommodations for, a sick kid.
Or health
Turns out, turns out that some people do, and I actually had a paid maternity leave that would rival that of a Fortune 500 company. And I've always been accommodated. I consider myself very lucky, but I also think that it's, we're going to see a shift and people are going to understand if we want to retain people in this workforce, this needs to be the norm.
Right. And not just for females, but for everybody involved in the industry itself.
For everyone. Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that reverberated with me when you were in Orlando, and after meeting, I'll call her Chef Rhodes after meeting her, and she was just a delight, and having her family there definitely, and what she's now become, school teacher or culinary teacher for kids from 2 to 17. It's amazing what she's done. Let's fast forward now to how you guys are taking the needs to the masses with now this new program that you're starting with the Lee Initiative. How are we going about doing this? I saw that you have Atlanta, Washington, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so it was a quick process. Long story short, restaurants in Kentucky closed on March 15th. They were effectively closed at 5 o'clock that day. We were all pretty shocked. We knew it was coming, but we didn't realize it was coming so quickly. Essentially, we had 48 hours, maybe less, to turn 610 Magnolia into a relief center. So we realized at that moment that 90% of the people that we knew were now unemployed, and we took that personally. So we set up a store with basic needs, everything from diapers and formula to paper goods. We started doing food rescue from the restaurants that we knew that had closed and converting those into hot meals. That was day one. We had reached out to Maker's Mark, who gave us some funding to start the first one. And Thomas and, the team at Maker's, they don't just invest in a project. They're actually boots on the ground, and they show up to volunteer. I can let Thomas take it from here, but essentially what happened was they were like, okay, this isn't a Kentucky problem. This is a nationwide problem, and we are going to figure out how to do this everywhere.
So Thomas, take it away. I mean, it's your platform. Because I emailed Lindsay earlier. There's a restaurant tour down here that once we got shut down, inevitably, first the bars and nightclubs, then we had to go to curbside. He let go 650 restaurant employees that were his. And he now has one unit that is just feeding one meal a day to restaurant people in Palm Beach County. And I know he would love some relief. I know we're doing a lot of donation, and I saw that, there's a certain thing we could do to help him maybe get started with something and kind of collaborate with the Lee Initiative and helping get this word out for him.
Yeah, it's been an absolute whirlwind of an experience. Like Lindsay said, we got 610 Magnolia up and running the first day of closed down restaurants, and we realized as this was happening that it was happening all over the nation. And we leaned on local markets to see if they had any funds that they could reallocate from events that were canceling all over the nation and put in there. And so from there, it's Maker's Mark, but it's also the local teams that work for Maker's Mark in each one of these local markets stepping up and helping fund. The one really, really important thing is that I think that people need to understand is that Maker's Mark is not funding this in its entirety. There's no way that we could do that with the amount of people that need help. A lot of it's also coming from local individuals in the community itself that's going to leeinitiative.org, and they are donating to the local markets where these relief centers are set up. I believe, Lindsay, we're in 14 markets right now. We have 14 centers.
14 markets with 15 locations. Brooklyn's so large they got 2.
Right. And especially what's going on with New York.
Yeah. So a way to keep, the last thing that we want is for someone to get mobbed with a massive amount of people at one time. So it has to be highly organized, 6 feet apart, we really have to focus. Our number one goal is to keep the people safe that are running these centers. Beyond that, we want them to be able to rehire their staff, and we want them to be able to feed the public. Food rescue plays a big part in this too. Food banks are busting at the seams because every restaurant closed on the same day. I'm sure you can imagine what that looks like.
Yep. It's amazing the magnitude of what COVID-19 has done in not just my area. I know just south of my location, there's over 4,000 confirmed cases, and that's about an hour and a half away from me in Miami.
Wow.
There's another 1,200 cases in Broward County. I know we've gone up exponentially, like the rest of the country has gone up in Palm Beach. But I know that we are pretty much decimated as far as the restaurant community down here. And I don't know who else in Broward and Dade County. I'm looking for people to chime in on the comments, which nobody's really chimed in about different restaurants that might be doing similar to what you guys are doing or what Rodney's doing. I'd love to put them in touch with how we can start doing something and be number 15. I know, or 16 rather. Lindsay, I've been working diligently with my chapter of the American Culinary Federation, Palm Beach Chefs Association, to do a Lee Initiative down here, but I think we're actually having a meeting tomorrow with my board, and this is something I want to bring up with them as well. So how does someone get started to help out and start doing this in their own community?
Yeah, so essentially we have to go to the areas first where we can find market funds. If there is a community that can raise seed money themselves to start, we will absolutely give them our blueprint. We will help them. We want these centers everywhere that they're needed. We just don't have the funding and capacity to do it everywhere. But if your chapter can come together, I can tell you it's about $50,000 to reopen a restaurant as a relief center and keep it up and running for a month. That allows someone to rehire their staff to feed around 250 to 300 people a day and provide basic necessities. And then based on food donations, that money could keep someone open through the entire quarantine period. We don't know how long that's going to be yet, so
yes,
we're trying. We're building this plane as we're flying it. We've never done this before. Our background's in mentorship, not relief kitchens, but we're putting everything that we have into this to make sure that the community, the service industry knows that we did not forget them. Someone is here for them, and we will.
Right, which is, one of my members actually said it's uncharted territory. Nobody, we're all asking the questions too.
Right.
I've asked these chefs this past week, what do you think the other side looks for us as far as what the restaurant industry is going to do? And that's, nobody really knows.
Right, and with these relief centers, part of what's so important to invest enough that people can rehire their staff is because at the end of this, when we all need to rebuild, those people will be loyal to you because they were able to keep their job. The amount of team building that comes out of running a relief center is phenomenal. I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have independent restaurants in it, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to try to at least save some.
Right.
Because in reality, a lot of restaurants will not reopen after this.
What's amazing is that recently I just got a article from Brio Bravo, which is out of Ohio, and they're
I actually there.
So did I, and I actually opened up the one in Palm Beach. Funny to think that there goes the CEOs going up there and saying, if this goes any longer, we're going to have to close 71 units for Brio Bravo. If that doesn't send a clear-cut message of what the severity of what this is causing to the restaurant industry and among other industries. Obviously, we're focused on the service industry because that's who we are as a whole, but this is affecting, like I said, 1 million pounds of green beans that were only for food service are about to be molded back into the ground because they're not retail, they're not pretty, and they're going to throw them away. And I'm right now thinking and game planning and talking to that farmer and the tomato farmer from Di Maria, who were mentioned in the Miami Herald article, seeing what we could do to stop it from happening.
Right.
It's
well, that's it. Yeah. Part of this too, it's become a lot about food rescue, which is not where we started, but it made sense. Like, okay, all this food's going to go bad. We have chefs that can turn it into something, and we have hungry people. It's essentially just redefining the food chain and pivoting to, I mean, we all know that's what we do is we feed people. We just have to look at it a different way and do it in a different manner.
well, and I think the bond that Maker's Mark and the Lee Foundation have is extremely strong, and it's wise to do because, I think, and I've always said this, the restaurant is the soul of the community. And to sit down and have a drink, especially after a long day and especially after what we're going through as human beings, it says a lot to that partnership. Now, Thomas, you actually said the local market. So you're talking about your distributors that distribute Maker's Mark, correct? When you're saying,
and also like we have, satellite offices. So Beam Suntory owns Maker's Mark that has a bunch of other brands. So we have satellite offices that operate in those markets, as part of the brand, but doing their own events and stuff like that in each individual market.
well, and I'm glad you actually mentioned the seed that needs to happen is 50 grand because I know last year the Bahamas were absolutely decimated by the hurricane. We have a very strong population down here that are very giving. At the time, we raised about almost $50,000 for that cause. So I know now where I need to go when I meet my board tomorrow. Hopefully we can raise these funds and start that seed so that you guys don't have to worry as much, or maybe you guys figure out how much we can come up with and kind of supplement that from that standpoint. But I definitely want to get more and more people involved in this because we're going to need it as this goes on. Again, like Lindsay said, we don't know how. Our governor in Florida just shut us down completely tomorrow.
Right.
So
I think something else that's important to talk about, like Lindsay said, we're boots on the ground. I volunteer at the center twice a week. My wife is actually heading there to volunteer right now. What we're seeing is the community is coming together. Like we are feeding restaurant workers. Lindsay pointed out the amount of smiles and thank yous that we get with these people that are going through, probably the worst experience of their lives is the service industry at the heart. I was a bartender for 10 years. It's my family and my friends that were helping out, and how the communities come together and rescued food, barbecue places that are shut down that are giving us all this meat, produce. It's really helped us feed a lot of people a lot faster than we thought we were going to be able to.
Yeah, and you're saying that when this person is able to turn this restaurant unit into more of like a food rescue, as you call it, that person can pay his staff or her staff an hourly wage to keep them employed getting money, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
So they could get volunteers if they wanted to, but this is a way for that restaurateur to keep the staff.
Yeah, you'll definitely need a couple volunteers too, but part of this is we want you to be able to rehire your staff. We want to create jobs through this. You have the infrastructure and people that know how to do it, rehire them. They're still doing the same job. It's just to help their community and not the general public. The meals that we're putting out are beautiful. It's not your typical, like what you would get at a soup kitchen. It's very elevated cuisine. That's part of it is these people are receiving aid for the first time in their lives. We want this to be a positive experience.
Right. And do you guys limit the amount of meals, and how does one go about setting that up? Like, do they have to show a paycheck that we're in the industry?
So just a paycheck or a schedule, something like that, just to like throw it up and say that, show us that you work in a restaurant or you did. And then we prepare for 250 to 300 people a day. We have had days where we run out. We have had days where we have a little bit left over. The food is never going to waste. There are plenty of places to take food if you have it left over, but most of the time we run out, which we're doing all that we can, and based on how we have it set up in our manpower, that's as far as we can go at one drop. We do have someone in Chicago that's doing 400 people a day, but they have a bigger location.
God bless.
Yeah.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, did I see there was 2 different time segments that you were doing it as well? Or is it one?
Everybody has a different time for their area. For us, it's 5 to 7. I know in New Orleans, they're doing 1 to 3, I believe. Atlanta is 3 to 5. Everybody we trust these locations to set up and work in their community the way it makes sense for their community. We're not going to be, our only thing is we give you a set of rules that are for safety that everybody needs to follow. And then we give you kind of a budget formula of how much you can spend on labor and how much on food if you want to be sustainable.
That's awesome. So if somebody wants to, once they see this, where would they go besides, obviously they're going to go to Lee Initiative and apply there to see if they want to open up their restaurant to do this? Is that that's the way to go?
Really, we're starting with markets that we've secured funds for. But if somebody wants to inquire about it, definitely just email me, Lindsay@610magnolia.com, which you can see on the website. As you know, we're a tiny organization. We have 2 employees. So
one of which is extremely busy doing books and other things. Well, now he's doing this, but yeah, I understood completely. Now so your goal obviously is to get as many people fed and to keep as many people in the industry itself. What other things are you just offering? Just food, or are you making sure mental health is okay when they're going through too? I mean, what have you seen like when you're in the trenches, Tom? That you've been there. What do you see?
With how a typical interaction works is, we're masked up, we're gloved up, we go to the car, they hold their pay stub to the window, they crack it, we ask them. Some people come up and they say, we just need a hot meal. Other people say, we need groceries. And then you ask, do you have any specific needs? Do you have a child at home? Do you need diapers? What size diapers? And then you go and you get the goods for them. And when you come back, a lot of times it's, do you need any more volunteers? I want to help. Sometimes it's tears. Most of the times it's thank yous and smiles. The mental health is an interesting aspect. We try to keep it moving. There's not a lot of time to talk, and we don't want to get too close. Because we are going by the strictest CDC guidelines that we can to keep everybody safe, because we want to operate this as long as possible.
Gotcha.
But that's a great question.
I mean, it's something. The reason why I've started this podcast a week ago, I started with Chef Emerson Frisbee, who's a local, very talented chef here. His restaurant has since closed, but he was a recovering addict, so I wanted to make sure we get it out there as much as possible. And kudos to the American Culinary Federation about doing a mental health panel next week, talking about the mental health of our state right now, of our chefs, because let's face it, we do like to drink, we work hard, we party hard, but there's always that instance of it. And one of the things I want to stop is if we can stop one person, just that one person, from doing that extra drink or going that extra mile or step to doing something stupid. That's what it is for me. But I mean, that's one of the reasons why I asked that question.
That's an excellent question. It's something that I think, as more and more chefs and servers and bartenders have more and more time on their hand, something that we've been doing and is talking to your friends and the people around you, reaching out. That's something I've been working hard on. Is every day texting a bartender or a chef friend of mine and asking them how they're doing, and not just hey, how's it going, but an in-depth, like real, like you would if you were sitting next to them.
Right.
And that's one small way that I've been doing it. Lindsay's been doing it. I'm not sure about larger scale.
Yeah. Well, I think just having someone right now ask you how you're doing is a much more loaded question than it used to be. No one's asking you that because they want you to say, oh, I'm great. Like, I actually want to know how you are doing. We're all dealing with this in a very different way. And it's harder for some than it is in others. And when I call, I reached out to the mentees a couple days ago. I called each one of them and made sure to designate at least 20 minutes to hear how they were really doing. And I think that that's all that we can do right now.
Right. And that's the key too. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're doing it on a large. It doesn't matter if you're doing it on a large scale. The large scale is if everyone did it or does it. To saying, no, how are you? I think that's just tremendous. And I think, kudos to the first person that put up the Christmas lights, and kudos to the Hallmark Channel for, rerunning all the Christmas stuff as much as I can't stand the Christmas music because I've been in the industry way too long. It's very welcome. It brings a lot of humility and comfort, to what we're going through right now as the human race. Anything else you guys want to add to the conversation? There's really, believe it or not, a lot of people are on, but they're just basically listening. They're not. So I guess we covered everything that was great, and it was hopefully we can get some more stuff out there. But anything you guys want to close with?
I'll go first, and then Lindsay, you can. One thing I want to say, coming from the industry, and I've worked for Maker's Mark for 4 years now, is right now everybody's hurting, and when people are hurting, you help them, especially your family. And the service industry, I know each individual market is tight knit, and as a whole, as a nation, we're tight knit. And so, basically, what I want to say is that we're going to get through this. There are going to be people there that are going to help you. I think it's up to individuals themselves to understand that and realize that, and ask for help when they need it, and come get help when you need it, because people are going to be there to help you.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't really say much more than that. Just that, we are going to get through this together. We are going to come out of it more united on the other side. But if you need help, there's nothing wrong with asking for it. Please do. If someone doesn't know how to help you, I'm sure they'll find someone who does. And just try to be there for one another. None of us know what we're doing. This is an unprecedented situation, and just try your hardest. And, the way that people react in situations like this are often tied to later on some of the most important moments of their life. So choose how you deal with this wisely and be there for your community.
Exactly. And, it's funny because Millie, just one of my members, what might help is to talk to someone or do some manual hobbies. I mean, we're all at home, and if you are at home and you can't, for some reason, go volunteer, if you're high risk, like an asthmatic like myself, think about the honeydew list. Think about what you can do around your house. Think about, we're all chefs, mixologists. Think about everyone doing it. Put out a video on going back to basics, how to break down. Because, listen, there's 150-something million people that went out every single day for dinner or lunch or breakfast, and guess what? They're not anymore. And those poor souls need to know how to cook.
Yeah. People are cooking more than they ever have. Start a YouTube channel, or a Facebook Live channel, and cook for people. Teach someone how to make a cocktail at home. Everyone's at home cooking.
So another ACF member, Josh Kranz, I've never been more proud to be a part of this industry and see how we are all coming together and helping one another. So I totally agree, Josh, completely, 100%. This is what we're made of. I mean, the only thing we know how to do is feed people, and feeding people makes people happy.
Well, and one thing is, people in this industry, I mean, you were kind of made for this. Like, we know how to react on the fly. Never in the history of the world has a service gone exactly the way we thought it was going to. So, you're always going to have a vegan that shows up to your whole beast feast. You've got to figure it out. So.
Yeah, that always happens. Or a guy that eats plant-based like me, but that's besides the point. At least I still eat meat. Guys, I really do appreciate you stopping at your busy schedules. I know this was amazing. I will put it on YouTube. I will make it shareable. It actually already is shareable. Please post it to your sites. Post it wherever you want. And the same goes for everybody that's watching today. Be safe. More importantly, Lindsay, I will get in touch with you after my meeting tomorrow at 3.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, I'll let you know how that goes, and hopefully we can do something down here. Thomas, nice meeting you,
It
man.
was nice to meet
I
you,
look
man.
forward to meeting you face to face without social distancing.
Me too.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Be
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you, guys.